Good evening, I'm Val Zavala.
And I'm Jess Marlowe. At a time when we're all concerned about attacks from foreign terrorists, many local neighborhoods are under siege from within. Gang violence is the problem, and this year it may well claim upwards of 400 lives in the Los Angeles area.
But for the better part of the past decade, gang murders have been on the decline, largely because of a series of ceasefires, treaties, and truces. But in the San Fernando Valley, neighborhoods have been terrorized this summer with one bloody killing spree after another. Tonight, Gay reports from one of the most dangerous spots, Pacoima, where one former gang member is trying to act as a peacemaker.
At first glance, this old home video doesn't seem very important, but to some people, it was an historic moment. The teams were made up of rival gangs from the San Fernando Valley, playing on a football field instead of killing each other on the streets.
I want everybody to know there ain't no losers here in this game. It's nothing but winners.
Almost a decade ago, gangs in the San Fernando Valley agreed to stop the killing after a wave of drive-bys and murders.
February 3rd, 1990, man. I planted a seed at the San Fernando Cemetery.
One of the people who helped broker the peace accord was William Blinky Rodriguez.
My son, Sonny, was killed in a drive-by February 3rd, 1990. What's a sad commentary is that I'm not unique. I'm not unique. How many families have lost?
Today's headlines indicate many, even now. The peace didn't last. Since January, there have been 35 gang-related killings in the valley.
There's been gangs from another neighborhood that would come down this street, and if there's anybody standing on the sidewalk, they'll start shooting.
But Rodriguez and his hardcore gang intervention team aren't giving up. They took us to Blythe Street. It's home to one of the most notorious gangs in the valley, a neighborhood where people live in fear. The playground is empty, and big brothers refuse to let their young siblings outside.
Last time a 3-year-old got shot.
Just by being outside.
Rodriguez is in the neighborhood promoting a softball game between the Blythe Street and Langdon Street gangs, two groups whose rivalries go way back.
Everyone says, well, why do they do it? No one can put their finger. Why do they do it? Why did the Hatfields and McCoys go at it? Has anyone figured that one out yet? Was it over a water well? I don't know. All I know is that it's happening.
Rodriguez says if there was peace once, there can be again.
Hey, Spider, it's me, Blinky. We're going to do that thing at 2 o'clock instead of 3.
The latest crime wave has motivated Rodriguez to mobilize.
Hey, homies, we gotta do this thing
the former kickboxer turned minister is working with other clergy, meeting with gang members once a week to promote peace.
What we're doing is we're reaching the gangsters, the young people, to bring a positive word, a message that can bring a transformation.
A few weeks ago, they held a peace march. Mayor Hahn was there and other officials, sitting side by side with gangbangers. But critics say what Rodriguez wants is unrealistic, that a gang truce could only be a short-term fix, that treaties in general never last. Rodriguez disagrees.
The rational thing to do is just say, forget about them, okay, forget about them. Keep doing this. And then the soundbite is, we're not dying, we're multiplying.
Some of his strongest supporters have been gang members themselves, older ones like Big Spider from the Criminals and Scrappy from the Langdon Street gang. Both took part in the ceasefire nearly a decade ago and remember it as the good old days.
We used to go cruising. I see his homeboys there, Langdon. I see Van Nuys, Blythe Street, Sanfer, all these other neighborhoods, and everybody was cool.
Spider and Scrappy aren't sure why peace unraveled. Maybe new gangs, maybe new members too young to remember the truce. But they agreed a treaty is not enough.
To me, it's like for the community just to say, oh, well, we're tired of killing. Well, so are we. Well, what are you going to do about it?
Rodriguez says his nonprofit group, Communities in Schools, is one of just a handful promoting gang intervention and jobs. But he says even when times were good, local businesses rarely supported them.
What are you, sitting on your armchair with your remote control? No offense, that's what you want to do, do it. But don't cast stones unless you're going to roll your sleeves up, unless you know the pain. Hey, I seen my son's feet hanging out from under a white sheet. I seen them. my kid, and how many kids now?
Scrappy says he's a father himself now. He has a 5-year-old daughter. He says no one knows better that the killing needs to end.
And nobody else is going to stop it. Nobody will be able to stop it unless it's us, you know. And we say, okay, well, you know, we're tired of it. For the simple fact, because it's not just about us anymore. It's our kids, your kids, because a bullet doesn't know a name.
There is some good news to report in all of this. The landmark gang truce in Watts, negotiated in the days after the LA riots, seems to be holding. The truce brought an end to the violence between the Crips and the Bloods. Now some of the people behind that effort say they may try to organize a national gang peace summit later this year. A moment ago, you heard how gang counselor Blinky Rodriguez is trying to broker a new ceasefire in Pacoima. But are treaties the best solution to gang violence? Not entirely, says a Los Angeles priest who's had years of experience with gangs.
Father Gregory Boyle has worked with troubled kids in East LA for the past 14 years. His Homeboy Industries, a program that provides jobs and training to former gang members, is well known. Jess and I talked with Father Boyle about how to stop the killings and restore the peace.
Father Boyle, with the increase in gang shootings, it appears the gang truce clearly has failed. Is it time for another gang summit, a restoration of the truce?
It's time to do a lot of things. I think one of the things that the city has to decide to do and have the will to do is to do intervention and really have something for gang members to move toward. If law enforcement provides a certain kind of responsible and reasonable heat that will move them towards light, towards jobs and an ability to rehab and to be in recovery, if you will, that's what the city needs to kind of concentrate on. It's not a question, I don't think, of just trying to bring sides together necessarily to kind of, give peace a chance. I think a lot of it has to do with gang violence is always about something else. If you can find out what the something else is underneath, then you can in fact address that issue of despair and lack of hope and inability to find employment.
But if you're saying you're not a big fan of truces as a real solution, at the same time, I mean, look at these numbers. In 1993, before the truce, we had 346 gang-related murders in LA. After the truce, 6 years later, it drops way down to less than half of that, 136. Truces seem to work.
Yeah, I never said that I wasn't a big fan of truces. I said what I do is I try to do intervention, which is you try to offer jobs and an alternative to gang members who want to walk in that direction towards the stuff that will, in fact, help them. I mean, part of the problem is what you have to do sometimes in order to effect a truce is you have to acknowledge that these entities, the gangs, the groups, have a validity and a right to sort of exist in a community. I think law enforcement needs to be clear and speak kind of with the clarity of parents that say this is not acceptable here. And then provide, again, a certain kind of vigilance that will hopefully move them towards programs. The problem is that we don't have enough intervention or anything to offer gang members if a kid decides to, I have had enough of this. This morning I buried my 108th young person killed because of this. I don't think you can ever lay anything as the one reason why we've had a decrease in gang violence or increase. During that period of the truces, you had the economy in a certain position that was quite robust, and certainly you had more jobs, and I think you had a lot of other things in place. And my concern here is that we have a high degree of reverence for how complex this issue is. I'm not in favor of any one solution, and I don't suggest that jobs is the one thing that you have to do. I think you have to do all things, prevention, intervention, and suppression at the same time. If one is in fact failing, then you're going to have trouble.
You talked about law enforcement applying heat. Is it, as we have heard, the case that since Rampart, the police have been applying less heat?
Well, I think it's, certainly there are diminished numbers in terms of morale is an issue among law enforcement in LA City, certainly. And I think there isn't the kind of vigilance where you have the presence where gang members used to come to me and say, gee, it's too hot out here right now. Do you have a job for me, or do you have something that I can actually...
Hot meaning that the cops are...
Hot meaning that there's a vigilance that's saying this is not okay to be congregating here or to be engaged in this.
And you're not hearing that now?
No, you don't hear that at all. In fact, the 2 kids that I buried, I think, had there been kind of more presence and vigilance, which is a healthy thing for a community to say, gee, this isn't acceptable here. We're not seeing you as the enemy. There's no demonizing that's going on. You know, there isn't an occupying force in terms of the police presence, but the kind of clarity that ought to be there isn't there. That's a piece that's missing right now, and I think that accounts for a lot of what's going on, coupled with the fact that there isn't any opportunity for gang members to redirect their lives anyway.
You deal with neighborhoods that are policed by the LAPD and also by the Sheriff's Department. Is there a difference in the way law enforcement deals?
Well, primarily where my office is located is LAPD, but since my office gets about 1,000 gang members from all over LA County walking into our office every month to get free tattoo removal, job placement, counseling, or assistance primarily when they're released from detention, we get them from all over. I'm more familiar with the presence of LAPD than I am with the sheriffs.
But is there a difference, though?
You hear differences. I don't have any firsthand experience of that. That's kind of more on obviously on the county side.
Would you agree that part of the reason that we've heard is for the increase in gang violence is the fact that younger gang members don't remember the days of the truce? It's history to them, and that they are experiencing the gang experience is fairly new, and that means a kind of a new wave of violence before you can say enough. Time for another truce. Is it a new generation, a younger group?
Well, I don't know if it's about recalling truces. We've never had a truce on the east side of LA, certainly. So I think you always have younger kids who are coming up who want to prove themselves and somehow...
Do they have to learn the same lessons, hard lessons?
A little bit. I mean, I think, again, that's why you have to address this at every possible level. You know, if you can help a kid imagine a future that doesn't include your own funeral, then I think you've gone a long way to, preventing that kid from getting to a place where he inflicts harm. Or
we're told that the truce is holding in Watts or working in Watts. Would you agree?
I don't know. I don't know what's happening in Watts. I just know that this issue obviously is way larger than bringing sides together and saying, gee, let's can't we work this out? I've been there, done that. I mean, I've done truces, I've done peace treaties, I've done let's agree not to shoot into houses, let's agree not to shoot this summer. And I think in the end is you still haven't gotten underneath what is the problem that undergirds this symptom that we're seeing. And I think unless we really commit ourselves to do that in the fullest sense, I don't think you can sit gangs down and say, let's work out what your demands are, because there aren't any demands. It's not Middle East, it's not Northern Ireland.
And saying be nice isn't enough.
Yeah.
Father Gregory Boyle, thank you so much for your interview and for all your many years of hard work in East LA. Thanks.
Thank you both very much.